Are you ready? Stand by.
Welcome to the 3Gun Show, episode 69. I'm your host, Dave Hartman. My guest this week is Team Cap Arm shooter Jake Latola. This episode is brought to you by MGM Targets. Have you ever been at a match and thought, wow, I really need practice on those skinny knockdowns with my pistol? Or long-range practice sure would be easier if I had a couple steel targets with hit indicators. Well, you can get the same quality steel targets that you find in major matches at MGM Targets. Step up your practice or outfit your range and use the code DHMGM10 to save 10% on your purchase. MGM Targets. Leave nothing to chance. Now, MGM Targets is putting up some great prizes to give away to you over the next few months. April's giveaway is for an MGM Switch View lever. This little guy will help you quickly adjust magnification on your scope, which is important when transitioning from short to long-range targets and back. For details and how to enter, go to 3gunshow.com/MGM. In this episode, Jake Latola and I discuss practicing for spring matches during Minnesota winters, how he is balancing his 2016 3-gun season with the demands of a 3-month-old daughter, and how to perform a post-match self-assessment. Links to everything we discuss in this episode can be found at 3gunshow.com/episode 69, or you can just tap the album art on your smartphone and it will take you right there. Now, please join me in welcoming the show a man who was off to a hot start in the 2016 season, placing second in tactical optics at the Missouri 3-Gun Championship and third in practical at the 3-Gun Nation Southern Regional. Team Cap Arm shooter, Jake Latola. Jake, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad to have you, Jake. You know, you just you had like an awesome showing at the 3-Gun Nation Southern Regional, and you've been doing some great stuff in 3-Gun over like the last couple of years. And I want to kind of get into your background a little bit as far as shooting goes, but real briefly, why don't you give us an idea of who you are off the range?
Oh, you got it, man. First thing, just want to give props to the 3-Gun Show too. You definitely bringing in a lot of good shooters, introducing a lot of people, broadening folks' outreach, see what makes people tick. Big fan of the show and kind of weird sitting in the hot seat.
Well, thanks, man. And as we discussed in the pre-interview, you're the guy that has to answer the questions now. So you have to follow along here, and some of these may sound familiar to you. So you've actually got a leg up because you've heard these before.
Right. Well, I guess a little background on me. I'm a Minnesota boy. I grew up on the Iron Range in northern Minnesota. It's a pretty rural area. We'd shooting guns out in the backyard. Kind of grew up shooting 22s and shotguns and everything, and deer hunting and all that. And actually, when I was younger, I'd mow lawns. Like my uncle used to pay me bricks of 22 shells to mow his lawn, which when I look back on it was probably more like pest control for like him and my dad and stuff, because I got rid of all the squirrels and the rabbits and all those pesky critters that were getting into stuff all the time.
That's awesome. So how can I get my lawn mowed and get rid of all the pests in my yard?
Find the neighbor kids.
Exactly. Perfect.
So yeah, that's where I spent my time growing up. Was a big athlete in high school. So kind of always been a competitor. I ended up lettering in like 5 sports or something growing up in high school, and used to play a ton of golf. That was actually most of my background before getting into shooting. Was played a lot of tournament golf around the state of Minnesota, and growing up, my mom used to drop me and my best friend off at the local course in the morning. She'd go to work. We'd play like 45 holes. She'd pick us up at the end of the day, and then we'd go home, and we'd do that like 2, 3, 4 times a week. So it was always a, pretty steady grind of playing when we were younger.
Wow. Okay. So 45 holes is a lot of golf in one day. And I mean, like you're saying, grind. That has to be like the perfect like repetition and practice to actually get some sort of achievement in that sport.
Right. Yeah. And there was some screwing around too because we were 12.
Oh, of course.
So there's times it's like, oh, I bet you can't hit it over that or under that or off of that or what have you.
Of course, there's always that goes with it. So,
right.
So that was when you were 12. So how long did you guys keep that up? Was that like a summer gig type thing?
Well, up until we got old enough to actually, need to go to work. So when we were 15, 16, my dad owns a lumber yard that I grew up working in. So that's where I'd started to spend more and more of my free summertime, working there through college and everything. And kind of cut the golf short a little bit when we were 10, 11, 12, 13. We played tons of golf. And then as we got older, it kind of became the weekend gig.
Gotcha. Do you still golf at all now?
Not as much as I used to. I hurt my back a few years ago. That's actually how I got into 3-gun. I was a bachelor at the time before my wife and I were married. It was just me and my dog. So I'd go to work every day, and then when I got done, I was either going to play golf or going fishing. Rough life.
Yeah, no kidding.
So that was a ton of fun. And then a few years ago, I all of a sudden developed ton of terrible back pain and a herniated disc in my lower back, and ended up having surgery. And I just kind of fell into 3-gun. A buddy of mine, I bought a pistol. I bought a Springfield XDM 9mm. Like a couple of years before this, and just something to monkey around with. And he invited me to a USPSA match. So I'd gone to that, shot like maybe 2 or 3 USPSA matches, wasn't really that into it, was still doing the golf thing. Then I hurt my back, and that year he'd also invited me to shoot a 3-gun match. So show up with borrowed gear and, try to figure out this game. And I got done with the first stage, looked at him. I probably sent some kind of an expletive to him because I was telling him he's going to cost me a whole lot of money because, I knew right then I was hooked. So.
Well, that's awesome. So you shot a couple USPSA matches. Was pistol something that you did growing up, or was it just like rifles? And then did that ever like turn into hunting or anything? Or?
Oh yeah, we hunted quite a bit, but pistols was never really anything I shot much growing up. It was all 22s for the most part, maybe a little 22 pistol here and there, but I'd never fired any type of a larger center fire caliber until I was probably in my early 20s somewhere.
So what made you go to that first USPSA match?
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure? They're like, hey,
Right.
You got that pistol, you got to come use it now?
Pretty much. It was one of those things. They had the promotion, you get the holster and the pouches and the extra magazines and everything, and it's, hey, what are you going to do with that? I guess I'm going to come with you to a match.
Awesome. And so you shot a couple times. It doesn't sound like a USPSA pistol really tripped your trigger. So what was missing from that?
The chaos.
It's a good way to describe it.
3-gun's just big old match of chaos management. There's so many, in USPSA guys are worried about tenths, and in 3-gun guys are worried about 10 seconds because I ran where I wasn't supposed to, like the field courses are so much more spread out. There's so much more room to make both mental and physical errors that, you got to be on point. And at the same time, you have opportunities to recover when things aren't going well. Yeah,
that's a good point, and that I can relate to that. That's kind of like what drew me to it as well. Is I never had like the finesse, or maybe I just didn't spend enough time trying to develop it for USPSA pistol. And like you said, the chaos is easier to manage with 3-gun. Is just if you screw up, just run a little harder the next spot, until you reach like a certain level, and then you start stacking up at the top there.
Definitely. What gets a lot of those guys, they want to shoot 3-gun. They'd rather shoot 2-gun because everybody's got an AR-15 they want to take out and play with, but then the shotgun scares them away. And they're like, you mean I have to put shells in that thing?
So why? Okay, this has come up like a bunch, and I do hear this from local guys at my range too. But why is it that the shotgun is so scary? For me, it's so much fun.
Oh, it's a wonderful platform. I mean, you've got different types of ammunition, multi-projectile ammunition. I think Pat Kelly's talked about this in the past. You got birdshot, you got slugs, you got different types of birdshot, you got buckshot, you got different chokes. It's like the ultimate thinking man's platform. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and there's so much to manage in there too. It seems like a difficult platform to master, and maybe that's what seems so appealing about it.
Oh, definitely. For the folks who work hard at it, they smile when they see that big shotgun stage.
So okay, so we're taking it back. You shot your first 3-gun match. What was the next step for you?
Basically slitting the wrists of my bank account.
I've never heard it put that way. That's good.
I mean, it basically, there's no cheap parts in when you get into the game. Like everything's $50 or more. Once you even got all your guns.
Yeah, it's not like golf where you just go chase the bullet around, pick it up, and throw it again.
Right.
So was it like just an immediate going out and buying like the best gear you could? Did you dabble with like some gear that you had to learn some lessons from, or?
Well, it was some of that trying to figure out what I needed. I didn't know how seriously I was going to take it. It was something I was really interested in, but it's an expensive endeavor. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll run my XDM. I got to find a rifle. I ended up buying a used rifle from the guy that got me into it. He kind of gave me a good deal, and that was right around that 2013 time frame where things were real tight. Ammo was hard to come by. ARs were going for astronomical prices. So I was just trying to get enough gear to get into the game, and then try to keep my eyes open for used Benelli M1s or M2s, and was able to score a deal on a used M1, and kind of just jumped into it.
So then did you just start shooting local matches and keep up that sort of pace, or what brought you to the getting into 3-Gun Nation to the point where you could make it to the Pro Series?
Yeah, it all just started stemming from local matches. At first it was an excuse to hang out with some of the people that I'd met kind of in that first match or two. And, it was just trying to get better. Like I said, I've always been a competitor. So whatever I've done, it's like, oh, that was fun. Now I need to do it better. I need to be a better shooter, a better engineer, a better father, whatever. It's like, you got to keep progressing in life, or else you're just going to, be standing still. So, shoot the first couple matches, and some of my friends like to tease me about spreadsheets, but I literally had spreadsheets with all kinds of rows in them of things like, wow, you did this really bad, you should work on this, or this went well, focus on that, learn from that. So it was I kind of documented some of my progress, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, of that kind of post-game evaluation, but that kind of started for me right at the beginning.
Well, that's pretty cool. So have you then maintained those spreadsheets? Are you still working on the same ones, or do you ever go back and look at the old stuff?
Some of them are still saved, and it's like, wow, that was really dumb. This isn't what I did back then, But I can't think of any good examples off the top of my head, but some of them were just, petty stuff. There's a lot of time hanging out there that people don't really realize until they start breaking it down to that level. And, I can remember right after a stage, I can remember every shot that I fired. And sometimes you remember that for a lot longer period of time. It was the same thing when I played golf. Like, I can still tell you shots that I hit in certain rounds on certain holes in certain conditions. And that's kind of stuck with me through shooting too.
Now, the competitive bug, is that something that's like big in your family? I mean, obviously they, encourage you to go play golf. That may have been a unmonitored babysitting program. Jury's still out on that one, but was that encouraged by like your family and getting, into competition, and, what other forms has that taken in like your adult life other than 3-gun?
Well, my dad always was telling me that, nothing happens if you don't try. So that kind of just embedded itself in every element. If you're working on something at work, and you want to do that to the best of your ability, find the best solution, come up with the next best thing, so you don't have to go back and fix it again in the future. So it kind of just embeds itself in every element of your life, whether it's actually competing for something or just, the home life as well.
So now, do you then compete with your wife like on diaper changing contests and stuff of that nature?
She crushes me.
And do you ever let her win? Like, no, I tried.
Yeah, I try to get that, those first few when I get home from work, but by the end of the day, she's got a lot more tick marks on the scoreboard than I do.
So you mentioned that you picked up a good used rifle and a good used M2, you said, or M1?
M1.
M1. Now, are you still shooting that gear, or have you made upgrades along the way?
It's definitely grown through various channels. You start to figure out what works, what doesn't. To me, the rifle was the strangest part. Like, I didn't have any experience with AR-15s. Like, I think that first 3-gun match I shot was like my third time shooting one. And it's kind of a funny story. Like, might have been, I don't know if I was home visiting my parents after college or in college. I don't remember, but my dad had bought this Bushmaster AR-15, and here I'm like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. Black rifle, M4 clone kind of looking thing. So I'm digging for targets. I'm looking around here, and I mentioned my dad owns a small business, and so I find this box sitting in the kind of the junk room area, and it's full of holes. He's been shooting at this thing. It's got hundreds of rounds in it. And I pull it down, and it's weighted, and I'm like, oh, what a smart! He's a smart man. He put some ballast in here, that way it doesn't blow over in the wind. So I go up and I set this thing up. I didn't even open it up, right? Why would I open up a box full of holes? So, I unload a couple of mags into this thing, and I come back inside, and my dad's like, "Did you empty that box?" And I'm like, no. He's like, "Why did you shoot all my hats?" And he's got this box full of custom embroidered hats that for his business, and they're just full of holes. Limited edition, I guess you could call it now, but
that right there is like the picture of like a frugality. Like, I'm going to use this box to shoot, but I'm also still going to put my hats back in there and put it on the shelf.
Exactly.
Luckily, it wasn't like the family cat or something like that. That would have been a terrible story.
No doubt.
So did he get over that one? Did you have to buy him new hats or what?
I think he's still waiting on the IOU for that one, but I've given him some other stuff. It's actually funny. Anytime he comes to visit, he looks at my hat bin, and he's like, "Oh, new Vortex hat, a new JP hat." He doesn't even ask; he just takes them, and I'm like, "You know what? You've earned that."
Yeah, it's funny when the IOUs come to call them. Anyway, when you have to pay up, because we get so much from our parents when we're growing up that you really have no leg to stand on. When he wants to take your Vortex hat, years later.
Oh, exactly. So no, back to your question. The gear definitely evolved. Like, that first match. I mentioned the M1. I was running my friend's Versamax. And I like to remind this to one of the guys in the Minnesota 3-gun group, who's kind of our local organization, headed up by a few there's a handful of guys around here that put on our matches, basically do all the match directing work, and also host Nordic Components Tactical Shotgun Championship, which is now evolved into the Tri-Gun, the Nordic Vortex Tri-Gun. But
cool.
More on that later. But those guys, one of those guys who will remain nameless here.
Wow.
I'm making ready for this
Call him out.
like my second stage, right? And just on a Versamax or on a Benelli, you got to hit the little shell release tab.
Yeah.
Well, this, I'd hardly ever touched one of these fancy whiz-bang autoloaders. So I just racked the bolt, and here I am. And there's a video of him make ready. He sees me rack the bolt. He knows the chamber's empty. And, most of the time, you help the new shooters. You say, hey, bud, you're going to push this, rack the slide. And you see him turn around and smile at the camera and push the button.
Well, that's awful nice.
Yeah, it's funny because he didn't even know that he did it. We were driving down to Missouri 3-Gun Championship, a month ago, and I brought that one up, and but he got a good roar out of that one.
So then so you ended up with a Versamax? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I ended up with that Benelli M1. I found one used.
Oh, so the Versamax was the borrowed shotgun.
That was that first match borrowed shotgun kind of thing, and that gear evolution. Sorry, kind of jumping all over the place.
No, that's quite right.
That those first few matches really expose what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And maybe it was the second match. I remember shooting. Minnesota 3-Gun Group was a 3-Gun Nation club at the time, and they just introduced all the classifiers, and there was that one called Down and Dirty, and where you had to go prone and shoot a bunch of rifle. And I'm shooting that XDM, and it was literally like the day after that match, I realized that the plastic gun wasn't for me, and I needed a single action pistol. So I went out and ended up buying a 10 folio that I ran for the next couple of years after that, before the next evolution.
And what are you shooting, like a 2011 now then? Yeah,
eventually, actually, taking again, we're all over the place here, but that's okay.
No, that's fine.
My second year shooting, 2014, I ended up, just for kicks, I signed up for one of their regional matches, the Midwest regional. They had it at Rock Castle for 3-Gun Nation, and I ended up, when the scores came in, I was completely shocked where I finished. I ended up, I think, in like 8th place or something in TO and practical.
Wow.
And I had no idea. That was like my second major 3-gun match, maybe my third. And at that time, I ended up getting the invitation to the Pro Series qualifier, and I knew that if I was gonna do that, I was gonna make sure my equipment was not part of the equation. So I went out and was able to found a good used 2011 that got worked over by a local gunsmith. He checked it out for me and made sure everything was squared away, and been running that ever since.
Oh, that's cool. So the invitation to the Pro Series, did that leave you, getting any other gear that you needed squared away, or was the rifle and shotgun ready to go at that time?
By that time, it was already about where it needed to be. I'd take another step back. I'd ended up building a new upper. I'd built my own upper. I had a Lancer lower that I was running at the time, which was a super cool lower. I'd actually won that at my first major match, which actually somewhat surprising. My first major match was in 2013, our Nordic Components Tactical Shotgun Championship, and I'm with the quote-unquote super squad. I don't know how that happened, but you got Rob Romero, Jansen Jones, James Casanova, Jesse Tischhauser was there, Pat Kelly, Mark Hanisch. Like, I have no idea how I backdoored my way into the squad, right?
They're all like, who's the new guy?
Right. Who's the new guy in the unicorn t-shirt? That's what they really wanted to know. Which is a true story, by the way.
I'll ask about that. I'm interested to hear that one.
But believe it or not, first stage of my first major match with that cast of characters was a tie for a stage win.
No kidding.
Yeah, that was I still don't know how it happened. That was the year that the legend Tom Knapp passed away.
Oh yeah.
And at the tactical shotgun match, they always had like a Tom Knapp-esque stage where you were throwing stuff into the air and shooting it. And that year you had to throw a couple of clays up in the air. You could throw no more than 2. And so it was just throw the clays, shoot them, throw the clays, shoot them, reload. It wasn't like some giant field course or anything. But I had no idea. I was after Pat Kelly. I had no idea what I was going to do, how I was going to throw them. I mean, that was where the trick was. And I watched Pat Kelly. He had them domed down. And he'd grab 2 at a time, and he'd flick his wrist, and they would separate just beautifully, and he'd dust them both. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. And lo and behold, I guess it worked out.
Sweet. Yeah, I think picking Pat Kelly to model for shotgun technique is probably a good plan.
Oh, no doubt. Then I got to the next stage, and it was, I'm pretty sure every load that I grabbed off my belt came out looking like a snowball. Shells were everywhere.
So it was kind of a mixed bag at that match then, huh?
Oh, it was a learning experience, to say the least. But there had a few good stages. Was starting to figure it out. It was kind of interesting to see. I was able to hang with those guys on a few stages here and there, and beat them every now and then. And it was just kind of eye opening.
So how was it squatting with those guys being so new? I mean, was it like do you feel like you got like a leg up or like a head start on learning the the game from those guys?
Oh, absolutely. I asked questions shamelessly. I'm sure these guys were like, "Come on, man, I would like to focus on what I need to do." But I just kept asking questions, getting opinions, and you see some of those guys running stages, and it's like, oh, there's no hesitation between shooting positions. They just nail their loads. It's, guns up and targets are going down. And, you always, one of the easiest ways to learn is visually, right? So
right.
You watch those guys and, well, you start to pick things up rather quickly. So I'd say absolutely that was a leg up right away.
So, okay, now what was with the unicorn shirt?
Well, there's really not that good of a story besides my buddy didn't think that I'd do it. So you got all these guys in their jerseys and everything, and on the second day it was chilly, so I had on a overshirt of some kind, and right before it's my turn, I peel this thing off, and everybody just starts laughing. And I've got a squad picture of me sitting front row center with this giant unicorn, pink and purple and rainbows and waterfalls. It's majestic.
That's perfect.
And all the rest of these guys in their jerseys and everything. And yeah, that was one of my favorite memories. There was a lot of jokes going around after that one.
Oh, no kidding. If you're gonna stand out like with style, right?
Oh, if you can call that style, I don't know.
With courage, maybe?
There you go. That makes a lot more sense.
That's awesome. So so you won the Lancer lower off that. You built yourself a rifle.
Yes, sir. Put together a little home built rifle, shot matches with that for a couple of years, and put some. Was able to get a Vortex Razor HD, Gen 2, the 1-6, kind of one of the de facto standard 3-gun scopes that's out there right now, and that thing served me well. It still sits in the safe. It kind of one of those things. It's very. I don't know if it's had a malfunction. Knock on wood. So keep that one around.
Heck yeah. So when you got the call to try out for the Pro Series, you reevaluated your gear. Now, did you focus on practice, or did you reevaluate your practice? Did you put together a plan for for that match. What did you change about your soft goods upstairs?
That was more, so the match at that time was in February. And you find out that, you've qualified and it's September, October, and all I'm thinking of is I live in Minnesota and it's going to be frozen for the next 6 months.
Right.
So that was more of a time where I didn't want to make a fool of myself, was really what I was getting at. It was cold. I didn't have membership at a range at that time. I'd make frequent trips up, visit my parents, which was 3 hours away, and try to sneak some shooting in during that visit. And, there's a couple random little videos of me running out there. It's 20 below, and I'm, shooting some pistol in my big Sorel boots and ice cleats and everything that's on them, and just trying to stay warm. So, ended up trying to change things a little bit with dry fire, and I picked up an airsoft pistol, kind of try to get a little work in the basement during that cold part of the year. But my gear was pretty much squared away. Had a running a Benelli Vinci, which I still run now. Was getting into the 2011 platform and had that home built rifle that I'd mentioned. Those were the tools that got me to that point.
Nice. So then your dry fire routine, did you go off of one of the manuals like the Steve Anderson or Ben Steger or anything like that, or did you create like a program for yourself?
It was more of the wing it method.
Okay.
I just kind of always evaluate, what do I think I'm weak on? It's the same, that just kind of goes back to that golf background of, what it takes to be good at certain things. And if one area is weak, it's going to hurt you a lot worse than another area. So it's it ultimately comes down to how good you are on your bad day. When you're not at the top of your game, how do you recover? How do you still post a score that doesn't completely take you out of it? So, I just I knew the pistol was my weak part. I was changing platforms, so that's why I mentioned airsoft. I was doing a little bit of that, trying to get some rounds down range in the winter, and got to keep the stuff you're good at strong too, with shotgun and everything. But it was a tough balance. I was really nervous when I went down there, and some of the guys on my squad, they've been shooting for a long time, and they're from a lot more southern climates than I was.
Yeah. Well, and then you had that unicorn shirt too, so they probably didn't know what to think.
It was tucked away in my suitcase, but I chose not to wear it.
So you set up a dry fire program. You did some practice up at the parents' place, run around your Sorels. Anything else that you did as far as strategy for for the Pro Series qualifier?
No, not really. I mean, I knew I was going to have to shoot on the move, so I was just kind of working some of that. That's when it was kind of the old format of the Pro Series, where it was, all the shoot on the move, tight, fast bay style stages, rather than kind of the stand and deliver elimination format that it's currently set as.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just kind of trying to borrow some of, if it wasn't for DVR, you'd have a lot less things to learn from, watching those old episodes and watch guys that flow like water, like Daniel, just going down, and it's just smooth the whole way.
Oh yeah.
It's fun to watch guys like him and Greg and Nick and all those guys that have been doing this for a while.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to watch someone at like such a high level perform at that level, and it's especially when you're like 8 yards from them and watching them, in the middle of like their flow state, and it's very impressive.
Definitely.
So Jake, you've had a couple matches, big matches this year. You just had a pretty good finish at the 3GS Nations Southern Regional. Let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about that match. and give us an idea like the feel of it, and then let the audience know where you ended up.
Yeah, so at that match, it was I shot that match last year too, but it was in May, and it was like 95 degrees last year, so it was a little different this year. It was in the mid 60s. It was just awesome weather.
So that was just a couple weeks ago. That's like March, right?
Right. Yeah. March in Minnesota. I think it was snowing while I was gone, and
Yeah.
Down there it wasn't quite shorts weather even for somebody from the north. But it was a great match. 3Gun Nation's really done a great job with those regionals. I really enjoy them. They got those fast base style stages like you'd see, in the old Pro Series format, and then they was working some long range, big shotgun stage, and they run a lot of people through in 2 days. Kudos to them for that's a really good product, and I think they're doing it right with that. The match itself for me, it was great because I was able to pull off a third place finish, which I still don't know how it happened. I just kind of run up and shoot the targets, and then whatever happens. But I was able to shoot with my brother-in-law. That was a lot of fun. He lives in Nashville. That was his first major match, so was able to bring him down, and he got to shoot his first major match, and he was able to learn a lot. But that match it got off to a little bit of a rocky start. I'm pretty sure I went 2 for 1 on every pistol target first stage, and it's not the start that you want, but was able to hang it together and fought a couple of things, but ended up pulling off a third place finish.
Sweet. Well, congratulations on that finish. Now the pistol going 2 for 1 there, was that like can you blame that like on the cold winters and haven't been out practicing and didn't shake the cobwebs off, or what do you attribute that to?
That's just me. Sometimes I lack the patience, to really let the sights settle and break the shot when it needs to be there. You get a little too Ricky Bobby on the gas, and you see somebody like Rob Romero, who just crushed everybody at that match, right?
Yeah. And
he does it so effortlessly. It's like, oh, he can shoot a plate rack at 09 splits.
Yeah.
I can do that too. With a full magazine.
Yeah, it's it was amazing watching some of those videos of Rob shoot. Like, for someone who's supposedly taken a step back from competition to manage the I guess the competition in the Pro Series. It doesn't look like he's lost anything, and it may look like, I mean, he's at the peak of his game. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, he makes it sound like he sits around and eats pizza all day, but we all know that he's out there practicing just as hard as he always has been.
So I gotta, since you mentioned the make it sound like he sits around and eats pizza, I've heard from quite a few people of like, oh, I don't practice near as much as I want. I don't get the time to practice and stuff. And these are the people that are, consistently at the top of matches. And, they're always posting like, challenges on Instagram and YouTube and stuff like that. And it's like, what is with the BS act? Like, just say like, I take this serious. I really care about this, and I'm trying my butt off to perform well.
Yeah. Shooting's one of those things where it's strange because it's almost like it's frowned upon if you practice. It's like for some reason, oh, he practices, of course he's going to do good. Yeah. When in reality, you should be like, what, I've earned this because I've put in my time. Like you said, I've worked hard, I've earned it, and I deserve to be here.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny you mentioned the practice thing. The range that I started shooting competition at, it's a private range, so nothing's like sanctioned. It's all just like outlaw 3-gun and then like outlaw USPSA style things. But yeah, people definitely would say stuff like, well, you've been doing those secret practices. And it's like, well, the range is open the same hours for everybody. So,
right.
The fact that I come out here and shoot and want to get better, I mean, yeah, it's mind boggling. And I wonder if that's like, maybe them like trying to make themselves feel better about their performance? Of like,
kind of justify where you finish.
yeah, it's like, well, Jake's practicing and I'm not, so if I practice, I could be as good as Jake. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm finding that hard line, as we talked about in the pre-interview. I'm a new father, and my wife and I just had our daughter here 3 months ago. So, kind of carving out the time for that practice is becoming harder. Priorities shift. But it's not like I'm the first shooter that has a kid running around. Well, she's not running yet, I don't think, but I'm definitely not the first, but just kind of trying to, compartmentalize, that shooting life, that work life, and that home life, and, kind of be present and available and accountable at whatever it is I'm doing. If I'm going to be going downstairs to do some dry fire or going to the range, it's like, I need to be fully invested in that at that time. I can't be worried about, all right, is our daughter okay? I got to trust that that's going well, or, my wife's taking care of it, who's ever watching her, and, be focused on that. And, that's coming to be a balance for our family here. Try to figure that out. What's an appropriate allocation of time in various areas?
Interesting. So how have you decided that time should be allocated now?
Changing diapers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you're maybe not getting as much dry fire as you should?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes dry fire starts to feel like work, and especially once the season starts, it's more fun to go out and feel the gun go bang. So I'm able to get out a couple of times. I've had 2 major matches so far this year, and fortunately was able to get out a handful of times before each of them, and make sure the guns ran, make sure things were zeroed, and kind of get my mind right. Start seeing the pictures that you need to see in order to have that confidence that the target's going to go down when you press the trigger.
So then, what have you decided is like your weekly practice regimen given your new fatherly responsibilities?
Well, it's got to come at the expense of something, right? If
Right.
I'm going to practice, it's either going to be less time with my family or less sleep for me. So you can imagine it's the latter most of the time.
Yeah.
The only exception to that is it's tough to shoot in the dark for live fire. So, it's kind of just been making a proper arrangement with my wife and letting me sneak up to the range for a few hours that evening after work, and maybe a few dry fire sessions in the basement in the morning. And it's not fully defined yet. It's an ongoing learning experience.
So Jake, when we were chatting via email before we got talking here, you brought up one really cool topic that I can't wait to get into because it's one of my favorites and something that I'm working on. But it's doing a post game self analysis and the importance of that and how you break that down. So I think it would be kind of fun here if we talk like in the context of the Southern Regional. What sort of post match or post game self assessment did you do on that, and how do you structure that self assessment when you do it?
Right. Okay. Yeah. We I kind of mentioned it earlier about that self evaluation, that self analysis. You need to be honest with yourself first and foremost. If you're going back to golf, if you hit it in the woods every time off the tee, well, you probably need to work on your driver. Same thing kind of applies to shooting. If you can't hit that 5x5 steel plate at 20 yards, you probably need to work on your sight alignment and trigger press. For me, in terms of the Southern Regional, I kind of go back. I mentioned the spreadsheet thing, and I don't keep as up-to-date spreadsheets. I kind of log notes after every match that I shoot on, what went well, reinforce those positive thoughts, and then kind of identify, areas that should be worked on. I've started reading that that book of With Winning in Mind. I'm sure a ton of guys on your show have read that, but there's a lot of really good information in there, and never reinforcing the negative and just focusing on the things that worked well, and then identifying areas that you need to find solutions to. You need to work on your pistol shooting, figure out how to do that, figure out where you're weak in that element of your game. I kind of break it down into 5 areas when I look at it after a match. 1 is planning. 2 is indexes. 3 is execution. 4 is shooting. And then after that, I've added equipment. It's just another thing to look at. So, breaking down each of those 5, that doesn't turn into a real nice analogy or anything. Or an acronym, excuse me.
We need to get a good acronym going for that.
It's really terrible. If you can jumble up the letters and come up with a cool acronym, that'd be awesome.
So is planning, indexing,
execution, shooting, and equipment. So, for example, and this wasn't at the Southern Regional.
That's what I got.
It wasn't at the Southern Regional, but just 2 weeks before that, at the Missouri 3-Gun Championship, there were these 230-yard rifle targets that were best taken from prone. And there was a crest in the hill. Everybody was skipping rounds off, and a no-shoot target you had to shoot under. And I'm all worried about this crest in the hill. So I'm like, all right, planning. I'm going to use this mag. I get down with my big stick, my 48 rounder. And I put that down there in the walkthrough, and I'm like, oh, this should be a good height. Middle of the stage, hit it hard, drop prone, look through the scope, see nothing but white because that mag was way too tall. So, oh boy, planning just went out the window, right? So now I got to improvise, adapt, overcome, all that good stuff. What do? I end up rolling the rifle about 45 degrees and taking these targets at 230 with, a canted rifle when I don't necessarily need to, but I was too dumb to look ahead enough to use the proper magazine length.
Oh man, how did those hits work at 230 yards?
I think I had 2 makeups.
Okay. Well,
it actually surprisingly went okay. I was kind of shocked.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, so that kind of goes back to the planning piece of make sure your plan is sound and make sure you look at every piece of that. Identify those shooting positions that you want to be in, and, the equipment, especially if you're going prone or you're monopotting off a magazine or you're bracing off of a shooting position, make sure that hot brass from your rifle isn't going to kick off the wall and land in your shirt collar. If there's no other shooting position, flip your collar up, things like that of, try to avoid the randomness from jumping up and biting you, where. The next piece goes into the indexes, identifying those shooting positions that you want to get to. And that kind of, for me, comes back to some of those more technical old style Pro Series matches where you've got a sea of targets and, wide transitions back and forth. And, I know I need my foot here at this post to turn hard left and engage 2 targets. You gotta plan those out. It kind of goes hand in hand with your planning. But you got to identify those positions that, you need to hit in order for your run to go smooth.
So how do you remember those positions once the buzzer goes off and your mind goes away?
That is experience.
Okay.
I guess I've been fortunate to be able to, remember a lot of that stuff after the buzzer. Most of the time, asterisk there. Everybody has a little bit of a mind melt once the buzzer goes off, but that comes down to that preparation phase the day before when you're walking the stages. Some people just think they can come out and look at the stages and say, I'm good. I know how I think I should shoot this. Whereas when I leave the range after I've walked that stage, I remember every spot I need to be in. I remember where every target is. And I can rehearse that plan in my head as I'm, laying in bed, ready, trying to fall asleep that night. I can see the sights as I'm moving into those positions, knowing exactly what I'm going to see. You see a lot of guys using video on their walkthroughs. They bust their phone out and they're over here, 2 targets left, 4 targets right, duck under this thing. If that works for you, do it. I have been blessed with a pretty good memory for, kind of taking those mental photographs, and every once in a while I snap some pictures of a stage if there's some complexity there, but whatever works for you to be able to think about that and rehearse that, your stage plan in your head, is a huge advantage.
All right. So then, so the indexing comes down to your planning on how well you burn that in. And it comes from the day before the match, spending a ton of time going over that stage until it's imprinted.
Absolutely. Set your program.
Got it. So then, so how does how do you evaluate your execution then?
Well, how well did I perform to that plan? This is where, and these first 3 items are somewhat kind of interlaced with one another.
Mm-hmm.
But the execution piece comes into, did I hit my indexes? How well was my footwork on this stage? I kind of leave the shooting out as a separate element. But for example, there was a couple times at that 3-Gun Nation Southern Regional where execution-wise, I knew I needed to be, at this one post and look left or, what have you. And I missed it. I outran it by 2 paces. And then, you're backtracking on ground you've already covered and you're giving up some time right there. So it's those kinds of things to, evaluate your execution to the plan. It's one thing to think you have a really good plan, but then you have to compare actual results with what you laid out in your mind.
Yeah, I can relate to that, overrunning a position. I actually did that just this last weekend in a local match. There was an array of 4 rifle targets, 2 on the right and 2 on the left, and there was probably a three walking pace window where you could see all 4 targets, and once you got past that, you could only see 3. If you got before that, you could only see 3. So it was one of those things where you had to be within that 4-foot window. And I did this exact same thing. I completely overshot it. And later on, trying to think about it, I was, when I was doing my walkthrough, I was literally walking. And when I was in the under the timer, I was actually running to that position. So completely overshot it in my head.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
At least you didn't fall. It wasn't raining or anything like that where you hit the brakes and wipe out.
That's true. I did stay upright, so I'm putting that one in the win column.
There you go.
All right. So once you've evaluated your execution, then you look at your actual shooting.
Yes. And for me, that's where I've really started to, my goal for this year was to get more first shot hits. I mentioned earlier about, being a little too Ricky Bobby on the gas.
Yeah.
And, we all tend to do that, and one of the things that I like to do that is to, in training, you shoot close, you shoot fast, slow, you shoot near, far, you try to slow yourself down and see the sights that you need to see in order to get the hit. And, it's just kind of taking that piece back and looking at how you shot that stage. For example, I mentioned I went 2 for 1 way too many times on that first stage at the Southern Regional. And it was just, I wasn't patient. Those targets, they were 4x10 targets. So it's the tricky KO plates the 3-Gun Nation uses, but they were not that far away. It wasn't like I was standing on my head on one leg, whatever. They were, I would expect to be able to hit those, and I was just too fast. So, in that post-round analysis, looking back on that and say, all right, slow it down a little bit, get to the next stage. I think I had 1 makeup shot with the handgun on that next stage. So it's just kind of looking at your shooting. When it comes to long-range rifle shooting, it's, did I hold the proper wind, which gets back to your planning. And did I hold proper wind? Did I hold proper elevation? Unfortunately for us, we're in Minnesota, we don't have a lot of long range stages. So we're at a real disadvantage when we go to some of these other matches. Like I have a local range that goes out to 400 yards, but we can't shoot steel. So you kind of throw a few shots down on paper, check it on the glass, which, depending on the conditions, you might not be able to see the hits. Walk a half a mile to check your targets.
I've been there, and then you got to shut down the whole line because you're the guy that has to go out and check his targets. Yeah.
Yeah, you never want to be that guy.
Yeah, that's my local range that I belong to, or actually, yeah, I still belong there. The same thing. You can't shoot steel unless it's like in a match. So you're stuck with trying to figure it out on paper, and then hey, can I get a ceasefire? And then driving all the way down there, and kind of a pain in the neck. Yeah, so in Colorado here, we have a bunch of ranges that go out pretty far, but in most local matches, you don't get out past like 200 yards.
Sure. And that's probably the match director's decision. I mean, if you get newer shooters out there, they don't know they're dope. You ask them what they're zeroed at, and they might go, "What's a zero?"
Yeah.
I just put my EOTech on, and I'm good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all been there when we're new. And you just don't know any better. Sometimes you just don't know.
Yeah, I brought out a pal this last weekend. It was his first 3-gun match, and he's got a Vortex red dot. And I asked him, "What are you zeroed at?" And he's like 75 yards. And I for the life of me, I can't think of I couldn't think of what the second part of that 75 yards was. Because I know like 5,200, right? But okay, I'm like, huh. Well, just hopefully you're good here. And
right.
Luckily, it was like the long range portion was 80 yards. I'm like, okay, I will tell him nothing and let him put that dot right on the target. So, but yeah, I mean, I totally understand that.
So back to how to evaluate the shooting piece. It's more just being able to call your shots, remembering what the sights looked like when you did break the shot. For example, I have a tendency to peek on the shotgun. I think a lot of people do.
Oh, I'm horrible at that.
I've actually changed the sight setup on my shotgun. I have a really low profile rear sight on there that Mike Cyrus from Accurate Iron cut in for me. And then I have a pistol front sight. And that really helps me stay down on the gun because it's so low profile that to me, if the fiber optic's not in the rear, then I'm peeking. And that certainly helps me. Everybody's different, but those 12 gauges, they hurt.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always want to, shift my focal plane or something to, make sure I hit that target I was just aiming at. I don't know what the heck it is, but yeah, my cheek will come up off my shotgun, 9 times out of 10. So that's definitely something I'm working on.
It might have been Pat Kelly I heard it from, where he was saying wood on wood. Try to get that cheek just nailed down on there.
Absolutely.
So the last piece, I guess, shooting is just what it sounds like. You just got to be honest with yourself of, was I pushing my shots? Didn't I not have a proper hold? Did I not have a proper cheek weld? Why was I missing? And then as soon as you've identified what was going on, start focusing on what those good shots, what a successful shot looks like, and forget, the bad part of it. The last piece was equipment. That's more, did my gear do what I needed it to do? Did I have my belt set up, the best that I could for that particular stage? You mentioned Alabama examples. Stage 7, maybe. I don't remember the number anymore, but I was fortunate enough to pull off a stage win on that. And even with I threw a shot on the rifle paper and had a 2.5 second penalty and was still able to pull ahead, pull out a stage win on that. But I reconfigured my belt to make sure that my shotgun shells were where I wanted them, because I had a special mixed load. There was 13 shotgun targets out there, so I grabbed it loaded 4, and I had 2 slugs right away. And then it was all birdshot after that. And I knew the best place to make up time on that stage was to go 1 for 1 on the shotgun. And I was able to pull it off. And, but there was mandatory reloads with the rifle and the pistol. And I'd reconfigured my belt to have that, that mixed load, make sure that it was there.
Yeah.
And when it came to actually doing the reload with both the rifle and the pistol, my hand went to, where it's supposed to be.
Right.
Through all your training repetitions. And lo and behold, there's nothing there. So, now I'm looking down, fumbling around, so it's kind of assessing, how you had your belt set up. How could you have set it up better, down to, are my guns running right? That's either usually a maintenance item or a negligent maintenance item.
Yeah. Nice lack of maintenance item. I've done that one before.
Oh, haven't we all? So you have to clean guns?
Oh God, I know. That's yeah. Anyway, so so when you moved your magazines, did you just move them farther back on your belt, and then you're reaching down for them, and they were just not where you expected?
I always have my pistol mags like at my left hip bone, kind of like where they're legal for USPSA production.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I shot a lot of when I kind of first got started, and now I'm more of a limited guy when I do shoot USPSA, but just because I like shooting my 3-gun pistol. I don't care if I'm shooting minor power factor. I just like shooting my 3-gun pistol.
Yeah.
And so, all my trainings with the mag right there, but I actually moved them kind of right in front. So they're at about maybe 11 o'clock on my body, just forward of my left hip.
Oh, interesting.
And it's just far enough that it totally threw me for a loop.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever carried a pistol mag there, so I would be doing the same thing, trying to figure out where it's at.
Some of the long stage outlaw matches, like a Blue Ridge Mountain, Rocky Mountain 3-gun, those where you've got a slung gun and you maybe have to go prone, and you've got all these tasks to do on this stage. That's where that Safariland ELS system, where you can move your caddies around like we're talking about, is, it pays for itself right there, but at the cost of having to remember where you stashed your extra magazine when you actually need it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm new to the ELS system this year, so far I haven't had to move stuff around too much, but I can totally see that as a, because it gets so ingrained in your head, is like, when I need a rifle mag, here's where it is, and when I need a pistol mag, here's where it is.
Exactly. You get ingrained in that, and then 3-gun, like I said, it's all about chaos. Even to how you set your belt up is chaos.
Yeah. And then that buzzer goes off and the chaos starts, and kind of forget all that good stuff.
Absolutely.
So what sort of equipment evaluations did you make, other than, need to sort of ingrain where I place my magazines in the future? Any sort of malfunctions or anything you're going to fix for next time?
I did, through some later inspection, I found that I might have to replace my firing pin in my rifle. Unfortunately, I had a couple of light strikes throughout the match, but that's that maintenance or lack of maintenance in that. Maybe it's just firing pin was rounded off just enough to cause a few light strikes, but other than that, my gear was squared away. Everything ran well, but one thing, I mentioned I run a Benelli Vinci now, but sometimes with those inertia guns, a tendency to get some stovepipes when I'm trying to get off the gun too quick, and that happened. And I don't know if that necessarily falls in my execution, shooting, or equipment phase. Of that post round. Like I said, all these kind of mesh together, but if you don't back up that inertia gun with enough, and you're kind of soft shouldering it, and as you're trying to dismount on that last shot, sometimes you get malfunctions in those inertia guns.
Huh, so it's just taking that extra little fraction of a second to make sure that you absolutely did break that shot where it needed to be.
Yeah, follow through.
Yeah, for sure. So, Jake, when you do this this analysis, is this like in the hotel after a day of shooting for, the first part of the stages, or drive home, flight home, a couple days afterwards? When do you do this?
Usually right away. I mean, I try to kind of block it out while I'm still at the match. Just keep focusing on what's ahead of me, unless there's a real egregious error of some kind, like, hey, you could just got to slow down and get your hits. I might take that thought forward with me into a next stage. But it really comes after the match, or at least after the day is complete. I kind of look back and say, all right, this is what I did really good today. And these other things could use a little bit of a spit shine. And all right, how can I take those lessons and apply it to the next day, the next stages, the next 3, 4, 5 stages, however many you have the next day, and try to maximize what you have left in the match.
Nice, I like that. So now, what you mentioned with winning in mind, it seems like you have that sort of mindset to things in your personal life as well. Do you try to keep that in like a positive light, and to avoid shattering your own ego, or are you ruthless with your evaluation?
Yeah, it's more you can't be too hard on yourself. You need to be constructive, right? You can't reinforce the negative thoughts. And that's where you kind of got to take the good pieces, and then you got to try to find areas that you need to find solutions to. And that's hard to do. Back in my golf days, I used to have a temper when I was younger, and it's easy to slam clubs and swear at yourself too much. And shooting's very similar in the mental aspect, but also very different. Because like if you hit a poor shot in golf, you've got minutes to think about it till you hit your next shot, right?
Right.
So I've beat myself up plenty of hours before I ever got into shooting. I'm done with that. Walking down the course, oh, you idiot, why'd you do this? But shooting's so fast paced, so dynamic. It's you have to react. You don't have time to think about it. And I think that just kind of helps keep my mind clear and focus on the task at hand, and not worry too much about little mistakes here and there.
I like that. So Jake, it's just the beginning of the season here, and you've probably got a lot of matches coming up. What's your match schedule look like this year?
This year, unfortunately, I'd requalified for the Pro Series this year, but decided to step away from that. I mentioned we have a new daughter, and just that much more time off of work. Unfortunately, the pro matches are during the week this year. So it becomes more burden on my wife that I don't want to necessarily put her through. So I had to step back and decide to not do that this year, but still able to shoot, I don't know, maybe 7 major matches throughout the year, plus the local matches. Hopefully defend my Minnesota State TAC Ops League championship.
Very cool. So what match do you have coming up next? And maybe give us an idea of like what your thought process is in preparing for that match.
My schedule is pretty clear till the end of June, when we have the Nordic Vortex Trigun here in Minnesota, actually at my home range. As far as preparing for that match, it's more of the same. I'm very familiar with this range. There's not a lot of real long range type of stages that you'll see at like a Rock Castle Shooting Center, where they've got Thunder Valley, where you've got 400, 500 yard targets and swirling winds in all directions. There's only one stage with long range, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be challenging rifle targets. I can imagine these guys are going to put stuff up there where it might not be far away, but it's going to be small, and it's going to test your knowledge of your trajectory at all distances from, muzzle to 400 yards. You better know the arc that bullet's traveling on. So it's going to be, confirming that, making sure those dope numbers are good, and more of the, first shot hits and fast transitions.
Sweet. Now, I've heard a lot of people talking about the Trigun match, and they're excited that it's coming back, because a lot of people seem to associate it with like the old DPMS matches. Do you think that there's going to be sort of like a, retro feel to it, like we've, kind of seen in some of the other outlaw matches this year?
Maybe not full blown retro. Um, the Trigun was one of the early on, big major matches across the country. And unfortunately, there was some legal cases that shut that down, which then led to the birth of the Tactical Shotgun Championship. And that was, the Nordic Components Tactical Shotgun Championship, Nordic. What led to Nordic was that was the type of event that the venue could legally host. They were limited to, shooting shotguns. So it was always the dream of the folks in Minnesota that were experienced and shot a lot of major matches to resurrect the Trigun. And, that's what we're going to see here. It's at a different venue. It's not at the old DPMS range. It's at Forest Lake Sportsman's Club, which has, they've got, let's see, 7 or 8 brand new bays that they've built within the last year. I mentioned they have one longer range bay, a few other bays, and a little bit of natural terrain. But at the same time, I know there's talk about trying to do a multi-stage shotgun side match, where the Trigun's being resurrected, but we don't want to forget the Tactical Shotgun Championship roots either. So I think, folks that come out for that match are going to see a little bit of a kind of modern day 3-gun, maybe with some of the challenges that they see at, some of the other matches, maybe a few things they've never seen before. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. There's another match that, you kind of mentioned the old school feel to it. I know JP Enterprises is putting on the Resurgence 3-gun.
Yeah.
I know there's been some chatter about that, and I'm not sure if I'm going to make that one on my schedule or not, just with my vacation constraints. But, when I first got into this game, you hear all the stories of, the old Soldier of Fortune days and these blind stages, and you show up to the brief and it's like, whoa, that sounds awesome. We should do that. And, that's coming back. So hopefully they can get a good showing out there. I'm sure they're not going to let that one go to waste. I think that's going to be a premier challenge.
Yeah, it sounds like a really interesting match, and it's put on, by guys that were actually there for those early matches, and definitely a group of people that actually, care a lot about the sport. So, yeah, that should be a really fun match as well.
Absolutely. I know some of the things we touched on, the planning, the execution, kind of almost choreographing your stage routine. That all goes out the window at Resurgence.
Yeah.
You shoot what's in front of you.
Yeah, it'll be like the first time I shot a match.
Pretty much.
Before you knew that you could choreograph it or walk through it, everything. Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Hopefully, the Resurgence match catches on, and the Trigun sounds like a great match as well.
Hey, David, I got a question for you too. Have you shot any the pistol caliber carbine matches, or are those starting to grow in your area at all?
I have not seen a pistol caliber carbine match in my area.
Okay. I know Minnesota 3-gun group we started a new division where I think they're calling it limited carbine or something, but it's basically very similar to the 3-gun nation pistol caliber carbine division. Man, that looks like fun.
Yeah, I had quite an extensive conversation with Dylan Easley on it a couple episodes ago, and I think he's pretty much convinced me that I should shoot it before trying to hold my nose high and say that, well, that's not 3-gun. But yeah, I mean, the fact that it's like coming on strong in 3-gun nation and USPSA as well, and I've heard a lot of feedback from people that they're excited about it. Sounds like it could end up being a thing in a bunch of years here.
It just looks like so much fun. I mean, I haven't even shot it, but as soon as I heard the USPSA was going to introduce a PCC division, or they're at least provisional, they're looking at it. I saw 3-gun nation was starting to do it, and I'm like, you know what? That sounds pretty cool. I love, TAC Ops practical division, but sometimes you got to mix it up and keep things fresh.
Yeah, no kidding. And if guys like you and more people end up getting into it, then makes it more fun when there's like a stout range of people shooting it. So yeah, could be one to watch for the next couple of years here.
Definitely. I've watching a few guys shoot that division down in Alabama at the Southern Regional, and got back and was just about to push the send button on one of those JP GMR 13s, the 9mm carbines. And then I got the teaser that it sounds like they might be coming out with the next gen version. So
oh.
I don't know. I got that on the back burner of what I really, really want right now.
I saw Wilson Combat actually has a 9mm PCC now, and it's built from the ground up to be a pistol caliber carbine, well, as much as one that looks exactly like an AR-15 can. But the what was cool about theirs is like their magwell is like super flared for magazines, and I mean it's just like a one giant funnel. It was pretty cool to see that, rather than a lot of the companies are just making the AR-15 box smaller, where they're using like the full real estate available and just making a huge funnel, which I thought was kind of cool. Yeah, so check that one out. We got off track. What were we talking about? 3-gun. That's right.
We were talking about 3-gun.
Well, Jake, we're kind of working to wrap up here. So I got a couple last questions that I ask all my guests that I'm going to ask you. And first one, kind of goes along the line with pistol caliber carbine, is where do you see the sport of 3-gun headed?
Oh, man, it's definitely growing. I've seen this is my 4th year shooting 3-gun, and our local matches started off as 30, 40 guys, maybe 50 on occasion. And the first match we had in March in Minnesota, right? It was 65 degrees, but that never happens. So, but we had, I think it was like 96 people or something.
Wow. That's incredible.
So, in the time that I've been involved, we've seen that kick up, and you see that more and more at major matches. And, the options for major matches out there are really incredible. You've seen a lot of growth. There's a lot more matches out there, a lot of opportunity, for guys to get out, shoot a bigger match, hopefully even a little closer to home. I'd love to see that growth continue.
And there's lots of different styles of matches out there too. So it's pretty cool. You can kind of, listen to other guys talk and watch YouTube videos and things like that, and find like a match that fits your taste.
Definitely.
So Jake, can you tell me about your most spectacular disqualification?
I'm gonna pass on that one, because knock on wood, I haven't had one of those yet.
Ah, very nice.
But you know what they say, and I'm going to try to keep that, the case for as long as I can.
Very good. Well, Jake, if you could leave.
I do have a crazy match story for you, though. If
let's hear it. Let's sub that.
So you got, I'd mentioned the Tactical Shotgun Championship, and last year there was this kind of goofy stage. You couldn't have any more than 2 shells in your gun, and there's a tight shooting area. If you step outside of it, it's a procedural, and there's this wall of ports in front of you. And so you can, like I said, you can have no more than 2 shells in your gun. So you kind of shoot one, load one, move to the next port, shoot one, load one, go to the next port. You had to shoot from all the ports. And I'd been having occasional stovepipe problems, like I mentioned, but this was equipment related. I needed a new extractor and a new extractor spring, and I could not find one for the life of me. I was on every website that I could possibly think of, and I could not get one in time for Nordic.
And this is still for the Vinci?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And there was this, I take my last shot, and it's going to bolt lock. And you can see the round, this got on video somehow. It goes to bolt lock, and I'm pulling the gun out of the port, and you can see the shell kind of banging around inside my ejection port in my shotgun. And I'm pulling the rifle, I'm pulling the shotgun back, it's tilted to the side, and this shell literally flips around and lodges itself inside of the chamber backwards.
Oh, man.
Of my shotgun. I go to match saver, it falls out. I look in there, I cuss, as you would imagine. Fortunately, I had a knife on me. I peel that knife out. I pry that shell out of there, throw it, take my last shot. And that went around the match real quick that I was shanking shells, and I've had guys come up to me like, "You're that dude that had the weirdest malfunction I've ever seen."
Caught on
It
film.
was awesome. It's because of you I carry a knife at every match.
Well, there you go. Changing
Let that
people's
be
game.
a lesson. Keep your knife on you.
Oh man! So that actually destroy that stage for you then, or I mean, where did you end up in the pack on that?
I wasn't real good. I don't know, top third or top half on that stage. I had a miss, and it was kind of resetting my plan in my head, and you can see me kind of meat fisting it into the side as I'm trying to load some shells. But it was okay. That stage really could have cost me, because that was actually the first major match that I won. I edged out Rob Romero by a fraction.
Wow.
And had I not had that knife, could have been a different story.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, always carry a knife, just like in real life.
Right.
Well, Jake, man, this has been a lot of fun to chat with you and get your perspective on how you think about the game, and I like your step-by-step breakdown of the post match. So it's probably something I'm going to have to implement in my own game. And, so thank you for that. And going to give you the opportunity, if you want to leave the audience with one thought or one piece of advice, what would it be?
It's kind of one thing that I struggle with would be, letting the sights be your throttle. As I like to say, I don't know if I heard this or I made it up in my sleep, but I always like to say that first shot hits beat empty splits. And, not sure where that came from, but it rolled off the tongue one day. And like I said, I don't know if I heard it or I made it up, but it kind of one thing I think about when I'm getting a little too fast.
That's definitely good advice that people can take away. And well, I'm going to take that one to heart myself. So, well, Jake, again, this has been a lot of fun, man. I do appreciate your time, and we'll let you get back to your young daughter and your family there. And thanks for being on the 3Gun Show.
Yeah, appreciate it, Dave. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Jake Latola. This talk with Jake was fun. I loved how he discussed harnessing his competitive spirit and focusing it into 3Gun. His dry fire training and driving hours to his parents' house prove that if you want it bad enough, you will put the work in to get it. And of course, the self-assessment that we should all be doing after a match to reinforce successes and evaluate where we can improve. Again, selected links, including a great picture of Jake in his unicorn shirt and the video of his shotgun super malfunction, can be found on the website at 3gunshow.com/episode 69. And don't forget to sign up for the April giveaway of the MGM Target Switch View. Check it out at 3gunshow.com/MGM. When you make a purchase at MGM Targets, you can save 10% using the code DHMGM10. You can also support the 3Gun Show podcast by using our affiliate link when you shop at Brownells. Just go to 3gunshow.com/Brownells and shop like normal. Thank you so much for downloading, listening, and subscribing to the show. I'll catch you in the next episode.
If you are finished, unload, show clear.